Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome along. Inspire and be inspired. We are live from Alicante, Spain, 3 o'clock on Thursday, the 29th of April. Welcome to everybody with us, and a big shout out to you watching the recording. My name is Andy Ward, as I'm sure you're aware, and today we are going to be talking to a gentleman who we are very honoured to present his time to us. No mean feat getting him on board. We're talking to Mr. Wez Saunders, Managing Director of Defected Records, a label that I used to consider myself an aficionado of. As you can see here behind me, I had a record released with them in 2005, got me into the top 10. I'm officially a top 10 pop star, Soul Central, Strings of Life back then. A lot has happened with Defected since then. It's my pleasure to bring along the gentleman. Wez, greetings, sir. Thank you so much for giving me your time today, man. I really appreciate it.
No worries, mate. My pleasure, and nice to see you. And yeah, don't play it down, mate. That's a seminal anthem for a lot of people, eh? That's a big record.
Most
Number
definitely.
UK top 10, number 6, yeah.
Number 6, yes, number 6. I was invited to go on top of the pops, and I declined. That's always my little claim to fame. Nobody can ever take that away from me.
That's one for the grandchildren, isn't it? Eh?
Yeah, most definitely. So we will talk about Defected very soon. And as you'll see, we have people who are going to be passing through, loving the chat, liking the video, sharing the stream. So I want to say thank you to everybody that does that. It helps us get awareness and it helps the visibility. We'll get to Defected and you can comment on any questions that you see in the feed. But first of all, let's talk about you, because there's a whole heap going on before you became the managing director of Defected. Tell us about Wez Saunders, wherever you want to begin.
Well, nice to hello to everybody in the chat, and thanks for tuning in. So for those that don't know, my name is Wez Saunders, and I'm the managing director of Defected Records. I've been at Defected since the beginning of 2014, and my career in the music industry has been quite an interesting one. Should we say back in the late 90s and throughout my teens, I was always an aspiring DJ. Bit of a blagger, to be honest with you, at times, but blagging my way into gigs because I'd not actually played many places previously, and I was just on path to kind of get myself into the DJ world, as most people are, having discovered electronic music via actually Mars Pump Up the Volume was the first time I'd ever really come across something that was sample based, shall we say. My dad sort of sat me down and explained to me, that's Eric B. and Rakim, that's James Brown. I was going through all the samples in the record.
Really? So your dad was a bit of a geezer then, music head.
Yeah, he is a music head. I mean, but his taste had gone from everything from David Bowie and Stevie Wonder and the Eagles to kind of modern electronic at that time, and he introduced me to not only things like that but also like the Cold Cut bits and pieces compilations and various other sort of things that were going on around that time. And I just became fascinated by the fact that it wasn't a man and a guitar, it was something else musically, because I couldn't play any instruments or anything. So my parents bought me decks. I kind of started DJing, as you do in your teen years, getting into what was then jungle and drum and bass on the back of the rave scene. Couldn't really play, couldn't mix jungle at all, actually, and it was embarrassing. And but at the same time, a lot of the kind of what now I suppose classic house records, things like Show Me Love and Joe Smooth Promised Land and things like that. My cousins who were DJs started handing records down to me, so I started getting introduced to house music. My parents also bought me a Sony Walkman that I dropped and broke the tape deck, and all I could do was tune into the radio, and I was like listening to Kiss FM while it was still illegal. Trevor Mad Hat Nelson and Colin Dow and Colin Favor I later worked with, and they were like, I was listening to this stuff, Roger Sanchez guest mixes on Kiss FM that I just didn't even know what they were. But I started to develop a love for house music, really, without knowing it. And as I came out of that kind of jungle hardcore rave scene, as most people did in the early 90s to the mid 90s, I started to get into house music, started to mix house music and started to DJ. And I kind of got myself into circles. I was a big sort of Sasha and Digweed fan. I was following Sasha up and down the country as a teenager. And me and Zabila became pals, and we were hanging out in circles, kind of socialising and going to, all these sorts of events. And then my wife, we're still together, fell pregnant, and we're actually married now. We were married very soon after that with 2 children. We were married with 2 children by the time we were 22. So I focused on a career in investment banking because that was a real job, as most of the adults in my life had told me at the time.
Okay.
And I worked for Deutsche Bank for 12 years actually, and I was promoted every 2 years I was there, and I was on the way to being the youngest director they would have had at the time in Deutsche Bank operational history. I would have been 29 and director, and my brother died of leukemia, and he was my best friend, 3 years younger than me. I mean, actually, that's have him hanging up above me all the time. Actually, so he's yeah, that changed my life, just turned my life upside down. So I decided I didn't really want to work in investment banking anymore. Music was always my passion and my love, and I came home and just said to my wife, look, I don't want to do this anymore. Went in, spoke to my manager and just said, look, I don't want to do this anymore, but I'll see through everything that I was committed to doing. It took me nearly 2 years actually to leave the bank, and I was very, very fortunate that they made me redundant. And what that meant was I didn't have any bills, but I didn't have any money, and so I started my own record label from that day before my 30th birthday, actually, 24th of June 2010. I left the bank. Day after, I started up my own record label, family, Endemic Digital Inc. And the first few months, I was working pretty tirelessly. I mean, do you know Norman Hines, Strip Music Club? You know Norm? Do you know him?
Not off the top of my head.
Norman was a big part of, like, mentor for me at the time, teaching me the ropes and really the basics and the sort of the very sort of fundamentals of running your own record label. And I'd been working from June to end of October, and as many people may know, that in independent dance music, you actually have you get paid in quarterly. And I got my first royalty check at the end of October. It was 265 quid for 3 months' work. And I was just like,
big curry on the night.
how am I going to feed, a young family and bring them up in it like this? So the label ended up becoming a label suite. And I very quickly developed 2 new labels. One was Unrivaled Music, one was Sounds of One. Then I started Form and Function with Marky C, who I was DJing with at the time, who's a dear friend of mine. And then I started this charity organisation, or what became a charity organisation, First Steps, teaching young people how to produce. And what had happened at that time was I was working alongside James Fennings and Marshall Jefferson, and Marshall and James had introduced us to Kevin Saunderson. And Kevin said that my sons would like to be part of this kind of community development aspect and learn how to produce music. So we worked with Dan Tiers and Damari Saunderson, teaching them how to produce, and then from there we grew that out, expanded that out into a number of releases, but then integrated into a charity organisation called 8 Media, and that then went on to teach young people how to produce music, be radio presenters and TV presenters actually. So it became affiliated with the councils in East London, and we ended up teaching a number of young students. And actually 8 Media went on to host or J5, who's a big kind of grime R&B producer, pop producer now. He was one of the assistant teachers there. People like Jay Huss and Notes went through that school. So there was quite a lot of acts in that kind of lane. But during that time working with Kevin, I was part of the team that produced all of the anniversary editions of Inner City Good Life, and I had made some records with a singer called Sherry Van Dyer, who, along with Grant Nelson, was probably my biggest record, actually, a record called Fire. But Sherry and I made a record that was quite soulful, actually, and I was speaking to Kevin about it, and I said, look, can you introduce me to Simon Dunmore? I'd like to send it to Soul Heaven, actually, for consideration, and Defected had just partnered with Soul Heaven. And Simon politely declined, and that was that. And that our paths had crossed very briefly. But what had happened was I'd gone through this whole rigmarole of managing the labels, working really extensively. I was managing artists. I was working with managing Darren Emerson and his D-Tone label. and a number of other acts and artists during this time. And I just felt like I wasn't really getting anywhere, and I was putting in 150% effort, and I was, sleeping crazy hours, going to bed at like 4 a.m. and getting up at take my kids to school at 7:30, and just there wasn't enough hours in the day. I couldn't get any further. So one night I was just sat at home. It was quite late, and I just thought, you know what? I've crossed paths with Simon Dunmore. He's somebody I really admire, and I'm going to send him an email, just ask for a mentor. So I sent Simon an email just saying, look, this is who I am. This is what I've done. I'd love to have a chat with you. I'm just looking for a bit of advice and guidance and where to how to progress with my career. So Simon very kindly invited me in for a chat. And as anybody that was listening knows, Simon's time's really quite limited, as you can imagine. And I was in there, and every time I tell this story, it gets longer and longer. I was in there for about 4 days. No, it wasn't really. I was in there for about 2 hours. And it was around the time of Wolf of Wall Street. And I remember Simon saying to me, I believe you can sell me this pen. And I went home, and that was that. And we had a really good chat, and he gave me some really good, insightful information. And I was just really happy to have had the time. And then a couple of days later, I was in bed with a chest infection. And when I'm in bed, my phone goes on airplane mode, let alone when I'm ill. That's like phone off job. And I certainly don't answer the phone to numbers I don't recognize. And I was in bed with a chest infection with the phone on, and a number that I didn't recognize called me. And I answered the phone. This is Simon Dunmore. And
you certainly felt better.
He said, yeah, and that was that. No, and he said, how would you like a job? And I said, what's the job? And he said, well, you need to stop doing all these other things you're doing, because obviously I was working on a lot of sort of sections. He said, but it would be club promotions. So I said, what exactly does that? Because it sounded like it meant that like promoting club nights. And he said, oh, you need to get DJs to play Defected records. And I just thought, Simon Dunmore's going to pay me.
That's
to get
the easiest job in the world.
I was just like, wow, that's something I can do. So I said, yeah, sure, I'll happily do that. So went in, started at Defected in March 2014, and my job initially was to get service records, but very quickly, because of my experience, my understanding, I think Simon and I are quite similar in a promotional aspect of it. As you and I were talking about before this, I have a pretty good understanding of the music that DJs are playing and why. I can see your record collection behind you. I mean, I'm not in my space, but I've got just a small amount of records behind me. It's like music's always really dear to you, and you kind of end up sticking in a lane for the most part, even though when your taste changes. So I sort of understood what DJs were looking for and how they were looking to be promoted to or plugged to, right? Because that's important as well. So started to develop a really good relationship with people. My role as club promotions evolved into being executive producer of the Defected radio show. And at that time, the presenters were Copyright, and we went from transition from Copyright to Sam Devine. And that was what Sam launched as host of the radio show at a similar time that I started. We started using This Is Distorted for syndication and distribution, and that went on to grow from 100,000 downloads an episode to 1 million downloads per episode, and now syndicated in 100 plus countries, in 100 plus stations in 70 countries worldwide. And it's about weekly reach of 5 million people actually for both the Defected and the Glitterbox shows. But I also started doing radio plugin, and I noticed that I was building relationships with the producers at the radio stations, and just really kind of developing that side of it. And we were working alongside your armies and your listen ups with our priority records, but I started to take on some of that responsibility to a certain point myself, and started to kind of integrate and really kind of open up the relationships between A&R and marketing and alongside the digital marketing evolution. And at that point, the head of marketing for the record label left, and then the label manager left. So I became label manager and head of marketing. And then I became head of marketing for the business. And I was still head of marketing for the business, including events, label manager, executive producer of the radio show.
Juggling.
And we got to a point where the managing director at the time was leaving, and Simon Dunmore just, asked me what my vision was and where I saw myself and what I'd like to do. And I did say that at one point I would love to run the company. I wasn't expecting him to actually offer me that position, and he offered me that job, and that was in the beginning of 2017 ish. We'd done our Croatia festival for the first time in 2016. Glitterbox had been growing over the past few years. Glitterbox actually started the same year as I started at Defected as well in 2014 in the summer.
I was going to ask if you had any involvement in that, if that was maybe your brainchild or something.
It wasn't my brainchild. I can't take claim to that. It was definitely Simon's. I mean, initially it was going to be called. I remember him coming back from Ibiza and he said, "I've had a meeting with the guys at Boom and we're going to do a second party this season." And we just thought he meant like another Defected party. And he said, "Yeah, it's going to be called Glitterball at the time." And he said it's going to be contemporary house and disco. So we we're like, "Okay, cool." And he said, "Yeah, and we're going to start this season." And it's like 5 weeks away. So we ended up getting ourselves into a position. It obviously ended up changing its name to Glitterbox, and Glitterbox launched at Boom. And the parties were, I mean, the first few parties were just like invite only, a couple of hundred people, right? So at the beginning of the season, it was a slog, and then by the end of the season, it got to about 800, and then we moved from Boom to the Space Terrace.
Boom was not far from
Pasha.
Pasha. Okay. Yeah, I was going to say it's not far from Ocean Beach, in that kind of vicinity.
Yeah. It's not there anymore. It was only there for 1 or 2 years, I think. But yeah, we moved
you raped it and then you left, basically.
Shut down, unfortunately. But we moved to Space, and then we were at Space for a season. It started at like 800 to 1,000, and then we moved to, when Space shut down, we moved to High, and it got to a point where it was like growing slowly, and now we've been at High ever since. And it's an amazing club, an amazing space, amazing team, and an amazing fit for the brand, actually, because you know the Glitterbox brand really suits the club, actually. So we've been there ever since. But Glitterbox at that time in 2014, when it started through to 2016, was growing slowly. Defected took a year out of Ibiza in 2016 after a season at Amnesia. We'd done our first Croatia festival. So going into 2017, we'd done Glitterbox only in Ibiza. We'd done our first Croatia festival. We were a bit of a crossroads on a recordings side. We had the summer of 2017 was our first season at Eden, and it was our first year of doing both 2 parties in Ibiza and Croatia, and that was the first summer that I was managing director. And at the same time, we'd signed Cola, and Cola was bubbling. So the summer of 2017 was a interesting one, to say the least. And we decided from a business point of view at that time that we would be really kind of focusing on having control of our own kind of assets as much as possible. And there was a real shift in the business from being a compilations business and essentially like, you know, product led to actually more of a singles based business where we were focusing on, you know, one track and streaming and all of these things starting to integrate. And we decided, where we had been over the years licensing our repertoire to third parties, etc., that we were going to keep the rights ourselves. And I remember having a phone call with Elderbrook's manager while I was in Ibiza that summer, because a major label had offered us well into 6 figures to license Cola, and just sort of saying to Simon, like, are we really going to say no? Do you know what I mean? It's like, it was an interesting summer, but you know, we set a strategy at that point to grow our business and really focus on the community, which has always been front and center of Defected under Simon's regime. And really to kind of give our community something to focus on. And we set this strategy, it was like 10-10-20, which was to grow our audience to 10 million followers by October 2020. And we were at 1.6 million at the time. And it was never about the number. It was about the culture and the mindset, right? So it's like encouraging staff to believe that we're able to grow to that sort of stature and enable us to believe that the records we're signing are good enough for that many people, and that the events we're doing, you know, is all of that kind of mindset, not about the number. And we just started to come up with a real considered content strategy, a digital marketing strategy, a strategy to further engage with and enhance our community kind of relationships, and put on great parties and release great records and do what we believed our community wanted. And the reason that we felt like we could connect with that is because we are you, right? We are the community. We love house music. We still, as you've got your record collection behind you, still collect records, still curate playlists, still like to hear and discover new music and go to events and, have a nice time. So it's it was all part of the evolution. And then as that started over the next couple of years, when we started experimenting in certain things, we did the first we were the first people to put DJs on Tower Bridge as part of that activation. We had Sam Divine and Camel Fat DJ from the Top as part of a week where we launched, where Cola had hit 1 million download equivalents across the board. We were nominated for a Grammy and an Ivor Novello, and we just continued to kind of push our event strategy and focus on giving people, what they want, and in terms of a good time, and understanding the marketing value of your events business in the live space, but also your online activations in the digital marketing space. But remembering throughout that whole time that music is front and center of everything you do, because without good records and without DJs, liking and people liking your records and whatever, you've got no business at the end of the day. So really important to keep an eye on that. And then as that started to unfold over the next couple of years, we put on our first London festival in 2019, our only one to date, unfortunately, because of last year. But that was an incredible show. It was an incredible day, actually.
I was under the impression that you'd done so many more.
The London Festival, the London Festival. So we've done Croatia since 2016, and we've been part of, Creamfields and We Are Festival and all sorts of festivals up and down the country, and Tomorrowland throughout Europe and across the world, doing tours in Australia and America. But our own Defected festival, we did the first one in 2019. And as 2019 closed, having done 225 events and our records surpassing a billion streams for the first time in a year, and we did tours across the world in Australia and America, and 2020 was looking like a really, really good year. And obviously, I just never forget January time, my daughter saying to me, who was 20 at the time, saying to me, "Dad, should I be worried about this coronavirus?" And I'm just saying to her, look, there's been swine flu and there's been, all sorts of things over the years, just be careful, but it will come and go, blah, blah, blah. Of course, that was totally wrong, wasn't it? And as we were supposed to be going to America, family holiday in March. And as February was kind of closing, we were having lots of discussions about, should we cancel this? It's like, should we do this? And the business perspective, we had a tour in Australia at the beginning of the year. We managed to squeeze a cheeky event in at Glitterbox at Printworks on the what would it have been, around the 7th of March 2020, and that was the last event we did, actually. So
because the momentum was going crazy. I think it was the Simon's track. That was quite high at the time. I can't even think now. What was the Shapeshifters tune? Was it just before then that had started? To push?
The Life is a Dance Floor.
Possibly, I'm not sure. Or the back end of the summer before.
Yeah.
No, they'd had the huge one when myself and my family, we went to Defected in Croatia in 2019. And what was the huge tune that you'd released there? The Shapeshifters one.
There was what was the first one he did with Tenny? Was Try My Love.
No, I don't think.
When Love Breaks Down, Try My Love, Life is a Dance Floor, and Second Chance.
Oh, I can't even remember now. See, I should have prepared.
That's all right. He's been prolific, actually, and he's. I mean, Simon Marlin has worked, and alongside Simon Dunmore, they've really worked at focusing the development and redevelopment of Shapeshifters over the past sort of 4 or 5 years, and he's really. It's great to see him achieving again. I mean, finally ready last year with Billy Porter was a phenomenal.
Sorry, I cut off the flow of the timeline. You said you got to the final gig at Printworks.
Yeah, so we finished. We had the Saturday was Glitterbox at Printworks. The Wednesday was our last day in the office, and the 12th of March we started to work from home. We made a call before the government did to make sure that we had a duty of care to look after our staff and humanity, to be quite honest with you, and that we would start working from home. That was a Thursday. On the Friday afternoon, myself and Simon and our digital marketing manager, Tom Cox, said we're in a chat about, about what was going on about digital marketing activities. And we just said, look, we need to put on a virtual festival because, people are going to be working from home for 3 to 6 weeks, as we thought at the time. And they're going to need something to remind them it's Friday and a little bit of hope and positivity. Let's, get pre-recorded sets or, live stream and let's put on some virtual activity. So the first one we did, we'd hired James Kirkham at the beginning of 2020 as Chief Business Officer. James is an incredible guy who has an amazing black book, and he worked at developing Copper 90, and he really has, a lot of skills in the sort of PR, public relations, and but also in terms of digital marketing and understanding the kind of agency aspect of how to develop, right? He's a great people's person. So we'd hired James, and James come in. We launched the first virtual festival on the 19th of March. It's mad how I can remember the dates. I'm crazy with numbers.
So remind me, the first one, was that the one where you were actually in a club? And Simon was there giving everybody the sanitizer. Right. I remember wiping the mixer down after every set had finished. I was watching it.
Yeah, I'm wiping the decks down. Being safe in that environment. But obviously then that weekend was when the government had officially locked everybody down. So from there onwards, from the week after, we did start doing the events, the virtual activity from people's homes, and we ended up doing 19 virtual festivals last year, each one spanning from sort of between midday and 2 p.m. through to 10 p.m. to midnight. And we just really, it was about hope and positivity. We just wanted to give people something to remind them it's Friday, something to look forward to, a little outlet for them to do whatever, enjoy themselves at home, have a dance, have a drink, whatever it is that they wanted to just forget about the world for 5 minutes, because obviously there was a huge amount of anxiety and pressure going on throughout at that time. We won for 260 physical events last year that we had to cancel, which was obviously significant for the business. I mean, it's like the events business is a significant part of our revenue streams. Thankfully, we were able to adjust as a business and focus on, from a senior management perspective, taking significant pay cuts to ensure that the business can survive. And staff actually took a small marginal pay cut to ensure the business could survive. And we, unfortunately, there were redundancies in the end, but I would say probably 3/4 of the people that were made redundant are back working with us now that we're able to rehire.
Bravo. And
it was always our intention to be the case, because unfortunately we just had nothing. We were furloughing people knowing that they had nothing to do, and that's just wasn't right really. So we unfortunately found ourselves in a difficult position to have to make some redundancies at the end of the summer. But almost all of them have worked for us in some capacity, even if it's kind of temporary or freelancing during that time. And as I say, about 3/4 of them are back working for us. So we've managed to keep a focus on that. But what we noticed was the trends, the consumer habits had changed. Obviously, there was no commuting to and from work, so people weren't listening to music in the same at the same times as they were previously. Because like even Spotify, you can see on the daily charts that the music consumption was high, and then it would decrease, and then it would go high at the end of the day where people are commuting, right? That had all gone. It was linear. Like everything was just all of a sudden was just linear. And but the increase in consumption, the consumption of music had increased last year, and there was a number of streaming services that were providing optimism and positive numbers, and that really helped the music industry survive. And there's a lot of criticism for streaming services, or has been over the years, whether it's the transition, and obviously naturally difficult transition from physical to digital media and then downloads to streaming. But the reality is, again, as you and I were talking about piracy before this, the reality is streaming has benefited the industry in a number of ways, because you still get paid in the long tail of streaming. Consumer habits, like a record, I don't know, like a Lee Walker Freak Like Me or a Pump It Up, which obviously gets criticised, but it's those records that keep the business afloat, right? So it's those records, the commercial value of doing something like that helps keep the business going. And a record like that will still do 250,000 streams a day now. Like we haven't been working that record for 2 years. So it's the way that streaming works. It really helps artists in the long term. Now that's an exception because it was also like yours, like a top 10 record in the UK. But even on a smaller scale, if you've got something that is considered to be a sort of seminal dance hit, shall we say, it can still tick over 10, 20, 50,000 streams a day, 2, 3, 4 years later. So I think streaming has a big part to, or big thanks to streaming for the music industry able to sort of stay afloat, and radio actually, because radio presenters being key workers as they were through wartime and everything else, are really there to communicate to the nation and the countries worldwide. And between the two streaming services and radio, they really kept dance music at the forefront. I think gave people a lot of positivity. And
how on the balance of things, how important, you saying it's important, but how important and influential is actual, when you say radio, you mean live radio online or FM radio, DAB?
I would say across the board, because I have a lot of friends that listen to Centre Force all the time, and Grant Nelson's Deep Radio Network, and there's a lot of people that listen to the independent stations are as valuable as the national stations for people. But of course, your Radio Ones and your Kiss FMs and your Capitals have such a huge reach, and the programming and the kind of the ethos of the stations throughout that time have led the way for many, in my opinion, because the tone of the positivity and the shift to dance music and just really trying to be positive, upbeat, like energetic at a time that was probably people were definitely struggling and continue to struggle, I think was really important actually. And I think they played a huge part in it, and perhaps one that doesn't necessarily always get recognised. And that's whether you're Pete Tong or Annie Mac, or whether you're Andy Wald or Grant Nelson, or whether you're Joe Bloggs, who's got his own small radio station. If you've got listeners and they're enjoying your show, that's hats off to everybody.
Cool. Let me roll back then, pre-COVID, and talk about a shift in demographic, a shift in the listeners and your target audience. Has there ever been a concentrated effort to redevelop, rebrand Defected to a different audience? Because my 19, 20-year-old kids love Defected, and yet you've got the 50-year-olds who are there from the very beginning, at the turn of the century, so to speak. How does that work? Who is your target audience?
I mean, our target audience is anyone that loves house music, and the company policy is in our house we're all equal, and house music all life long. Those two things pretty much spell out the way that we feel about,
and that speaks to everybody as well, doesn't it? And
it's inclusive. It's there's a couple of things in there. Firstly, just wrapping up on the streaming. So firstly, from a streaming, you can listen to that, I can listen to that, our kids can listen to that, and they do so on Spotify or Apple Music or YouTube or Deezer or TikTok or whatever platform is relevant to them. We made a strategy for the company for streaming to kind of focus our attention on streaming and actually for streams, because of the longevity that I mentioned to you, to essentially bankroll the company. My aim was to get our costs underneath the overall income of our streaming. Like, that was just the high level business objective in 2017 was my target. And if we didn't do that, we probably wouldn't have been able to survive through the pandemic last year, or now. And so that was the first thing. Now, we never changed the tactic on the tone of the music. The labels at Defected are very clearly defined. We have, Defected is that cool, like in the main, we've got records like Martinez Brothers and Louis Vega, Let It Go last year, or Boys Noise, or whatever. It's a cool house with the odd crossover record. DFTD is a little bit more sort of club underground, kind of European, as opposed to being less of the kind of UK tech house kind of sound. You've got Classic Music Company, which is a bit more left field, but kind of heads sort of house vibe. You've got Glitterbox, which is contemporary house and disco. We've just recently launched D for Dance, which is a commercial house record label. We have the Remedy Project by Melvo Baptiste, which is more of a kind of chilled kind of house, funk, soul outlet. We've got Sondella, which is Afro House. We've got the sulfuric labels that we control with Brian Tapper, and we've got the Big Love and Soul Heaven, which are also all soulful house vibes. You've got the Four to the Floor labels, whether it's New Groove or Move In or Faith, which are all kind of more for your head. So it doesn't matter who you are. If you like house music, there is something for you, right? And if you're like me, who likes all of those genres of house music, there's lots of things for you. And I mean, just Simon Garcia's just written here about my daughter 20 loves Defected, Sunny for Dare, and slightly harder stuff, Glitterbox for me, but I'm an old fart. I hear you, Simon.
Simon Gracia, yeah.
I'm sure that there's a lot of people. Gracia, sorry, I just a slip of the tongue. I'm sure a lot of people agree, and you go through these cycles. Defected, from an events perspective, our audience is young compared to other brands, but Glitterbox also has a huge young audience. So I think what we're offering, as I say, with our company mantra of in our house we will equal house music all life long, I'd like to hope give people the trust in the brands that if you come to one of our events, you're going to enjoy yourself if you're like-minded person who loves music like we all do. And I think that's all we really try to kind of, that's all we try to sort of, that's the message that we try to get across. Of course, when you've got some of the cooler, younger DJs playing, new upfront records, that, the Defected brand is definitely will feel a hell of a lot different to some of us older ones than what a Glitterbox party may do.
Yeah.
Because, if you've got a sing along and you've kind of, or a reminiscent of the times, then Glitterbox might be a little bit more friendly. But across the board, I guess all we're trying to do is provide something for anybody. And I've been to parties in a different way than some of our punters, because obviously I'm managing director. But I've been to I've been to parties with my children, with my nephews. It's bizarre. I'd have never been seen dead with my mum and dad in a nightclub, but they seem to be quite happy to.
Yeah. Well, in Croatia, singing along to Julia McKnight, I had my daughter on my shoulders for the masses at work. It was truly incredible, absolutely incredible. And my wife has taken her friends, age range from 40 through to 60. In high, it's great to see. Full credit to see, and full transparency. When Glitterbox came along, I was a little bit not dubious isn't the right word. Or I didn't get it immediately, but then slowly, my initial reaction was it felt a little bit staged, and then as I understood it and I got my head into the ethos way before I actually went to Croatia, I thought, no, this is genuine, this is real, and to see the community that you have from that, everything that done more. What is it? He's made a pact with somebody, because everything he touches is just incredible, right?
We the Glitterbox situation, when it first started, I think that there was a little bit of a question as to whether it was Defected 2.0 to some people. Was it Defected 20 years ago? There was, excuse me, there were questions as to whether it was of a certain age, or whether it was LGBTQ plus friendly, or what it was. But the fact of the matter is, it's all of those things. It's like, if you're a young 18-year-old young girls who want to go and enjoy yourself, or a Hindu, or a LGBTQ, or you're over 40 and you just want to go out on your 1 or 2 or 3 nights a year that you might go out, it's all of those things. It's very the staging aspect of it is an interesting comment. I've not heard anybody say that.
That's just me being an old cynic. Maybe seen so many things in the past.
Yeah, but it was it's that the perseverance in it has definitely paid off. Somebody's just mentioned here about the documentary on Glitterbox. Yeah, Where Love Lives, which is our first feature film stroke documentary as part of our content strategy. And it was really for us to kind of start to tap into that episodic and documentary form content. In fact, in the pandemic last year, as well as putting on all the virtual festivals, we made our first feature film, which had been recorded the year before and edited in the pandemic season. But we also relaunched Faith magazine, so we actually relaunched a printed magazine during the pandemic as well, which has just seen the third edition printed and distributed. It's a free magazine for anyone that's interested. You can grab it from our Defected store and pay postage and packaging. You get delivered to every issue. So it's a great read. So
definitely, you mentioned about the heads. I don't think it gets any more credible than that, does it? Really?
No, exactly that. And it's really important to have a balance as well, right? Because there's been a number of brands over the years that have pigeonholed themselves in just one part of this, and as soon as it doesn't become popular anymore, it's gone. Like, I think where we have the kind of the balance, I think we have the balance right between all of the labels,
Undoubtedly, and that was what led the question to say, is it a calculated strategy for you to cover all the genres because you do because you do it so well?
Yeah, it's not so much an age focus thing. It's purely taste, right? It's like if there's a gap, if we think that there's a gap in the market or in our sort of space or what we're doing, we believe that we have the right people around us to push on in that space, we'll go for it. I mean, the labels that I mentioned, it's like, Seamus Haji's came, I believe you're well acquainted with.
Very much so.
He's him and Big Love and Divine Sounds with Sam Divine, or Melvo Baptiste being the face of one of the faces of Glitterbox, but also with his Remedy project, and myself with D for Dance, and Seth Combo and Louis Dunmore Sondela. We've got people, Brian Tappert with Sulfuric and Terry Farley and co with Faith. You have that kind of level of credibility behind the A&R strategy for each of the labels, and as long as we can continue that, I think that we'll continue to not reinvent ourselves. It's not the right word to say, because we're definitely not doing that, but we'll try hard to stay relevant in those lanes.
Excellent. Well, I'm not sure how much time you can actually give to me today, but I'm going to ask you a couple more questions if that's okay. Yeah. You mentioned about the A&R, and one thing that I wanted to ask you about, because I know there's a hell of a lot of my friends who are DJs and producers who would, their dream would be to have a release in your camp somehow. What would be the best? Because there's, I wouldn't even dare to think how many demos you get sent, What would you say is the best way for people to approach Defected? Or is it a case of there is no point and you're going to hear a record if it's going to be picked up?
It's a tough one, and it varies between labels, in all honesty. First and foremost, I always encourage people to make music for themselves as opposed to trying to make a record for a label or somebody else, because I believe you lose that passion and that connection to a record if you're trying to make something for someone else. It's like I hear it all the time. I'm trying to make this record for Hot Creations. I'm trying to do this for Defected, or I'm trying to do this for Drum Code or whatever. It's just like, just make a record that you love, that you would play, that you would be proud of, that you'd play to your friends or your associates or whatever. In terms of demos, I've said in interviews before that we try to listen to every demo, and we have done, but it's just become like, I probably could have a team of 10 people listening to demos all day long. Like, I mentioned to you, I get 1,200 emails a day myself, and our demo inbox is probably about 2,000 emails a day. This is not enough hours in the day. So, of course, that's really difficult to kind of manage and listen to everything, although we try really hard to go back to people as much as possible, especially if they hit any up the A&Rs directly. I always tell people to create a story for their records, and some people mistake that as like social media following or anything else. It's not about that. It's about having hype and belief and understanding and a story to tell, because digital marketing strategy nowadays is important, actually, because there's very few and far records are very few and far between where it's just a cracking record that gets the love that it deserves, because lots of people have their agendas. And throughout the whole pandemic situation, there's been a real, even though I'm complimenting radio and streaming services, there's been a real lack of synergy between what's charting at Beatport, charting at Traxsource, being playlisted on radio, being playlisted at streaming services, and what's being played on the live streams.
So like the perfect storm kind of
scenario. A record like A Big Love or whatever, which would just be everywhere, right? And you'd go to clubs and you'd hear them playing it in the pub, or you'd hear them playing it at a rave, or you'd hear it on the radio, or there's just it'd be number one at Beatport and Traxsource. Just doesn't happen for a while. There's Traxsource friendly records, there's Beatport friendly records, there's streaming friendly records, there's radio friendly records, and DJs, because they're playing live streams and being seen by everybody, are trying to play new records every time they do a live stream. So they're not playing the same records like they would do in clubs.
Pet hate of mine.
Yeah. So it's been really tough for there to be any synergy between them. So it's important to try to get a story and something you can really talk about and keep the momentum going, because the only consistency you have at the moment are your social media channels. So, in the pre-pandemic, I would say if you got a record in the charts at Traxsource and you started talking about it and you had a top 10 or a number one record at Traxsource, then you would often see a spike at Beatport, and you'd see that the records would start to creep up there, and you'd get a top 10 at Beatport, and then you'd get DJs playing it in clubs and other places. Then you start to get videos of people playing it, and then you could use those to carry on talking about your records, and you could use all that ammunition to try to get radio to play it. And then obviously if radio's playing it, you can't ignore the streaming stats on it. Then you've got the streams, and it was a self-fulfilling sort of like activity that helped you to promote your record. But at the moment it's really tough, and that's why I'm a little bit hesitant in a sense of just, it's not a yes or no kind of answer. So what I would say to people is to try to create a story of their records themselves. Make something you love, try to create a story of it yourself. Now, if that means you've got to, chip away at a few people that play it, or you understand how people are playing records or who's playing records and where, then I would say focus on, developing relationships with DJs that would support your music or radio or on live streams. With the clubs reopening, do the same thing with DJs in clubs, because there a lot of the times that we may hear a record might be because someone else has played it or we've heard it from somewhere else.
Do you have active scouts who are checking all of the different charts of the big players, so to speak, to see the synergy, to see where everything's matching up, and then you say, okay, we need to look at this?
Not exactly, but I guess in some way or another, everybody that works with Defected is a scout, right? Because it's like, if we get it all the time. I mean, I don't recall now how we signed the Marco Fario and Armageddon record, but I think it was somebody played it on the live stream, Simon heard it, then he charted it on like Traxsource or whatever, and then there was another DJ played it on one of our streams, and then it started appearing in the Beatport charts, and then it was Danny Howard or somebody played it, and there was like all of a sudden this record that was just on a small label had started to be appearing like a lot, and we decided to kind of use that moment to pick up a record. It's because it's a great record. But then something like the Vision project is something that would be made by us.
That was the record I was trying to think of. The Vision.
Right. Yes. You're talking about Heaven.
Yes, that was the record that I was trying to think of.
I wondered. I thought I lost my touch with the Shapeshifters.
No, sorry, that was me. The Vision. That was just like, you could not escape that record, right?
No, that's right. Were you there when the power cut? Were you there when the power went off?
I don't know. I was probably 2 bottles of wine in.
There was.
On the smaller little vineyard side.
In the whole of Tisno, there was a power cut, and it was literally while they were on stage, and they just kind of ad-libbed their way through it. It was amazing. But sorry, going back to what we were saying. So the Vision was a project that was sort of created, and we worked for like 4 years at establishing that. The Honey Dijon album, the same thing. Still in progress. The album's not come out yet. A number of key singles that have been rolled out for it. Horse Meat Disco. So there's an investment aspect to it. DFTD is more of a one-off kind of sort of. There's more one-off kind of records, and some of the other labels that have their own definitions. Sondela is breaking new Afro house acts. D for Dance has kind of released some. I've got Todd Edwards' record coming on Friday, and last week I had a guy called Cola Beach who's his first record. So it's all about making sure that the records are right, and actually, understanding the ethos of each of the labels. So, you might send a record in for Defected, but it might be right for one of the other labels. Right. So it's the same team working these records, and there is a state. Don't get me wrong. There's clearly a status of releasing on Defected because of the history. Mm-hmm. 22 years old now. It's mad, isn't it? Hey? But of course, it's the same team working the records in the same way, or working the records effectively, shall we say? You're going to get the same love for it. So my advice to people goes back to the very beginning: make records that you love, that you would play, that you would support. Fans bring fans. If you find someone that likes your record, you're going to find another person that likes your record, and figure out a way of telling a story for your record, getting it into DJ's hands to get it seen and heard, because the more people playing it and the more people supporting you, they will help to position you for consideration. And we're certainly not alienating anybody, but at the same time, I want to understand that it's not just you've just made a record in your bedroom and want to be on Defected, right? Yeah. It is more than that.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to ask you one final question. Yourselves talking about social media and getting in front of people. Does it help being, arguably the biggest and best label in the world for house music? Does it help you with your visibility, breaking it down these so-called algorithms across all social media, or do you still have to work just as hard to make sure that you get in front of people?
Believe me, we have to work just as hard, right? I've seen records on independent artists releasing their own records doing multi-million streams while we're still got something on 10,000 streams. So it's not a given that we are in a position that we're in. We're not guaranteed. And going to that story element of what I mentioned there, I think we also have to figure out stories to tell, as to why you might want records playlisted at radio or streaming or whatever else. I mean, DJs are actually less fussier nowadays than what they were when I first started plugging records. You can, as in, you send your one sheets out and you tell a story, and you'd have to kind of sell it to someone. Now DJs seem to be the ones that play records that they just really love, mm-hmm. which is amazing, And don't forget that the DJs are absolutely fundamental to the story of your record. So getting it played with DJs is in my opinion the most important thing that you can do as a dance musician, right? Is if the DJs are supporting your records, that is more important than anything else, because without them and without them playing them in the clubs or in their virtual festivals or in their radio shows or anything else, then you've got nothing for your record. And just start at the basics right there. That would be my advice. So what I remind my guys a lot is we don't rely on one outlet. We're not relying on Friday Night Radio 1 or Saturday Night Kiss or Capital Dance or whatever to have a hit record. We're more, we absolutely delighted when those guys support our records, but as long as we can do a job and do a record justice and get it played by the right people, then we're happy.
And everything else kind of takes care of itself, so to speak.
And we know how to throw petrol on a fire. Don't get me wrong. Like, once there's a spark, we throw petrol on it. That's the difference between doing some of your independents or releasing with other labels and perhaps releasing with Defected, because we are able to we know what buttons to press when you need to. But at the very beginning, we start off in exactly the same position as a lot of you guys.
Wonderful.
And that will be really hard for people to believe, I'm sure. But
well, you can't get it any more clear than from the horse's mouth. So ready for the summer. or I see everyone starting to hype up August already in Croatia alone. That's all I'm seeing pushing at the moment. I saw Musti very excited about making it over there. It's kind of all systems go, 60% foot on the gas kind of thing.
I think there's a couple of things that on the whole COVID strategy. I mean, firstly, from a UK perspective, at the moment between the 12th of April and 17th of May, there's a lot of people still working from home, and obviously remember that the rule of six or two households outdoors still in play. And then from the 17th of May, people are still working from home and keeping public transport to essentials or a minimum, and that 30 people are able to meet outdoors. And if that goes well, then from the 21st of June, at the moment, the government are advising that there's no legal limit for social contact. I mean, we'll see if that kind of is as explicit as they're saying, but all remaining businesses, including nightclubs, can open at that point of time. You've got, at the moment, you've got 48 million vaccines out of 67 million people in the UK. We're at 97.5% reduction in death rates. And obviously, since early April, we've herd immunity in the UK. So we've got UCEF is doing the test in Liverpool tomorrow night for the first time in accordance with the government and the Liverpool Council. So we'll see how the 3,000 people get on. Then the events in Barcelona and the Netherlands have shown that the transmission of the coronavirus has been less than the public transmission at the events activity. So there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic. Obviously, we are in the hands of the government. I mean, our event on the 24th and 25th of July at the Drum Sheds is, the police and Tottenham Hotspur Football Club are also working alongside the council, because they have a match on the same day, are all being cautious but optimistic about the activity. The Croatian government have given us advice to say that if you've had a vaccine, if you have had COVID in the past 6 months, and if you have a test 3 days before, any one of those three things, that you'll be allowed to travel to Croatia. Our festival in Tisno is outdoors, so it will be in line with the EU suggestions of outdoor events activity. So at this moment in time, I have no reason to believe that our Croatia festival is going to be jeopardised at this moment, subject to change. Don't hold me to that. But sadly, I don't think our friends in Australia or America are going to be able to travel into Europe this summer, which is sad. We're going to miss them. But let's hope that we hope that India gets the situation in control, and that the rest of the world helped in that capacity to kind of get it in control sooner rather than later, and that we continue to move in the right direction. Because let's be honest, for all their sins, and I could talk all day about the British government, but they've done a good job with the rollout plan since Christmas, actually, and so that I'm grateful for. So I just hope that people don't get too excited, and they don't get let them
itch your feet beforehand as well. Itch your feet and start spoiling it at the last hurdle.
Like, we've come all this way, yeah. We're 13 months, nearly 14 months into this now. Let's not fuck it up at the last minute. Sorry, excuse my.
No, it's okay. Don't say shit or bugger. You're all right.
Let's not mess it up at the last minute. And if we can just get through the next 5 or 6 weeks, and the sun's shining, let's hope and pray that we have a good and safe summer, because we still have a job to do for humanity as well. Don't forget that.
Wonderful. Well, mate, as I say, I could quite easily sit here listening to you all day, but I'm fully aware of how precious your time is. And I want to say, on behalf of everybody that's watching and everybody that's going to pick up the recording, thank you so much, my man. I'm truly appreciate that.
My pleasure. And thank you for inviting me on. It's been great. And likewise, as you can tell, I have a lot to say. So, I'll come back anytime, talk about whatever topics you need.
I'll hold you to that. I actually do a music quiz occasionally. I've got a little buzzer set up going head to head. So maybe we could try and organise. You pick a couple from the Defected team, and we'll go head to head with somebody else. I love hosting these kind of things, all just for fun. So I'll bear you in mind. I'll drop you a mail.
Yeah, my kids have got this game. I can't remember the name of it. I'll have to message it. But basically, you have to play like a couple of. It's like a music quiz thing. I'll send it to you. It'll be a cracker. It'll be a good one. We get a house music version going.
But there you go. You see, that's the next step forward. The empire continues. Right, I'm going to say goodbye to everybody after I kick you out of Zoom. So thanks again, my friend. Thank you.
Take care. Thank you, everyone.
Take care, bro. Bye bye. Okay, so just throwing forward to on Monday. Next Monday, we have Mr. Lee Fisher and Jim Shaft Ryan. If you think that Defected Records are responsible for some of the biggest tracks and some of the biggest events in the world right now, anybody from the Second City will know that Lee Fisher and Jim Shaft Ryan were just as important back in their day. The foundations of the house music scene in Birmingham, and that's on Monday. So here I am, back again. I want to thank everybody that was here. So many people to give a shout out to that was watching live. I didn't really want to spend a second interrupting Wez, so I'm sure you'll forgive me for not saying hi and thank you direct. I can see so many of you liking the video on the page activity here, and then for anybody watching on a small device, just some words at the bottom. If you felt value in anything you've seen today and you'd like to help my project grow, then you can find the link to support in the video and page description. And don't forget to make sure you click the bell icon to get notified of any posts or live videos whenever we do actually go live. That's about it for me today. Special edition on this Thursday. Enjoy yourselves. Take care. I'll catch you over the weekend on the Vocal Booth Radio Show. Respect.